And thank you for joining us. With us today is Eric Shaffer, Laboratory Manager for Meadville Medical Center. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into what you do here.
Well, I'm a happily married man. I'm father of 2 girls, and I am an avid golfer. That's a nutshell. That's pretty much it.
Scotty Scheffler getting the attention he deserves, or not as much?
Sometimes too much.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
You know, with the PGA and his arrest and whatnot. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll get into golf later.
Yeah.
So how long have you been here at Meadville Medical Center?
I have been at Meadville Medical Center for 16 years and going on 17.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What brought you into this profession?
Well, I've always been somewhat of a kind of a science nerd. I guess I always excelled at science when I was in high school, and then when I went into the military, you know, they were like, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Oh, it would be great to do something in the hospital and, you know, for patient care and whatnot." So, I guess I was always drawn to the scientific side of things as far as the laboratory and whatnot.
Well, let's hold up a little bit here. Military, what did you do in the military?
I was a medic and a laboratory scientist in the Army for 5 years.
And what kind of experience did you get go in that direction? That's fascinating.
Some interesting experience. You know, I was stationed at a chemical weapons depot in Oregon, which was kind of interesting. You know, do you remember the movie The Rock?
Yeah.
Remember the VX poison gas? Well, we actually had that at that facility. It's not top secret anymore. But anyway, but yeah, it was interesting to say the least. You know, worked with a lot of Department of the Army civilians and things like that. Not a lot of soldiers. Was actually stationed at an installation that only contained about 5 or 7, depending on the time frame, active duty individuals. But the rest were all Department of the Army civilians and whatnot. But did a lot of interesting testing.
So how did you arrive at that decision to go that direction when you're looking at everything in high school and you're saying, do I go to college? Do I go this? How did that all come together?
I would say that I didn't want to do the traditional student, avenue or, go down that avenue. I wanted to, I didn't want my parents to feel like they were responsible for paying for college and things like that. So I wanted to do, something a little different, and just decided one day. I walked into the Army recruiting office. I actually went to the Air Force first, but I didn't really like the Air Force guy. So I went to the Army recruiter, and he's like, "Oh, sure, sign the dotted line." So I did.
So once you did that, how long did it take before you got on the path to where you ended up into that interesting part of the Army?
Well, it was about 2 years of actual training. So basic training, and then AIT, which is advanced individual training, and Texas and whatnot. So once all that training was done, 2 years later, I was into a 5-year contract and had 3 years left, and was doing a lot of interesting things.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And the science aspect stayed with you the whole time, and
yeah, and being in the military, you especially on the science side of things, you get to see things that another person in the science field might not get to see. We went to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland, and you see things that you can't quite believe what you're seeing. But anyway.
So as your time there started to come to an end, what sort of options were coming your way? What were you thinking in terms of career path?
Well, I had basically 2 avenues. I wanted to, I was looking at the FBI, working in the DNA lab, and I actually had a couple contacts at the DNA lab in Rockport, Maryland, I think it was, and decided that was quite a ways away. I don't really like the hustle and bustle of the city, so I decided to, stay closer to my aging parents and whatnot, and then decided to become a member of Meadville Medical Center.
So your family from this area?
Correct.
All right. Well, growing up here, it sounds like you had that opportunity to go out, explore, but yet come home and work. What was that like to return to this community and be a part of Meadville Medical Center?
It was good. Seeing a lot of different types of communities across the country, and being stationed in various locations and whatnot, you see how communities interact. And I've always thought that yes, we have a home or a small town feel here in Meadville, and especially where I grew up in Connieville. But it's nice, the people here, everybody it is a community. Everybody works together, I think, to move the community forward as much as we possibly can. So I do like the community aspect of our hospital and our surrounding area.
What's day-to-day like for you in the laboratory? That has to be fascinating.
Some days are more fascinating than
Okay.
others. It's I work on the administrative side. I worked my way up through the laboratory doing the testing and doing the validating and correlations and whatnot. But now it's really more of an administrative type role that I play in the laboratory. But we still do. I still help out from time to time and still look at interesting things under the microscope, so to speak. And but it's definitely more administrative.
What would the public be interested in learning? Because they'll hear when they visit the doctor, when they do blood work or whatever, it's being sent to the labs. Mm-hmm. What's really going on there? What should the public know when they hear that it's now in your hands?
Well, the laboratory itself is a very complicated, sometimes convoluted department. We are very regulated by the government, very regulated by the state. A lot of individuals or patients can sometimes think that we, run just any test that we possibly can. Well, it's from the standpoint of being efficient with testing, there are thousands upon thousands of tests out there, and we can only do testing that can be, efficient and, for our community and whatnot. So sometimes it's a little, can be misconstrued that we do everything. We do not. We do what our community, I would say, as a whole needs, and we try to meet the community as best we can. Not the community, or not just the community, but also the physicians as well.
So there's a lot to it.
There is quite a bit. Quite a bit. We are very, like I said, we are very scrutinized by the government and the state. We actually are inspected every year. We actually do a self-inspection and are inspected by the government every other year. But we constantly have entities that are asking questions and things like that. So highly regulated, but highly efficient in what we do here at Meadville Medical Center.
How many are in your department?
65.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Including the doctor is 67.
Okay, so give us just maybe that range, what your lab handles from this to this.
Well, I would say as a comparison, Titusville Area Hospital, they handle probably about 350 to 500,000 tests a year. Meadville Medical Center our laboratory handles about 1.4 million tests per year. And in comparison with, say, UPMC, down in Pittsburgh, they would probably handle 4 or 5 million tests per year. So, but it just depends on but we are a medium-sized hospital here at Meadville Medical Center, and we always try to incorporate all the testing that we need to provide for as much of our patient in our community as possible.
You put a lot of pressure on yourself to make sure it's right, to get it right, when you're talking about coming back to a community where you see a name on a label and you know that person. Is it different when you knowing that?
Yes and no. From the standpoint of, we always try to, every patient or every sample that comes in, from the HIPAA side of things, it's just a number, but because we are in a community, we do know those patients. But the ethical code of any laboratorian in any part of the country would, try to do their best, or, would always want to do what's right for that patient in that sample.
Are there times where because there's a lot to this process, right? Where maybe you get a sample and you're like, okay, something's not right. We need to go back to the doctor and have them redo it.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, sometimes that happens more than we'd like, just because there's so many moving parts to the collection, the transportation, and things like that. There are unfortunately times where stabilities and things like that happen where we might need to recollect something. We don't like to do that. However, from the patient side of things, if we don't recollect it, if we were to report out something that would be less than optimal, it may hurt the patient's care and the patient's recovery.
What's the technology like in the lab? How much has changed since you've been here?
Ever growing. It seems to change daily. The new methodologies and the complex nature of everything that we do in the laboratory, it just, every day you might find something new or a new panel, because a lot of the vendors and companies that we work with or partner with, the higher the methodology, the higher basically output they can make it, the better for, in the long run, the better for the samples, the better for the patients and things like that. You know, years ago we used to, I mean, this is kind of gross, but we used to pipette things by mouth, you know. We don't do that anymore. You know, we haven't done that for 30, 40 years. So it's just a matter of where, you know, you had to have, years ago when you would get a tube of blood, it had to be completely full, and you know, you had to have at least, you know, 100 to 300 mLs of liquid. Now we need microliters, which is a thousandth of you know, ml. So it's it's growing for sure.
What do you say to somebody who is thinking about entering this career field? It sounds like there's a range of things that can be done in the laboratory. Maybe talk a little bit about the different roles within the department.
Sure. I mean, at the top of the, you know, the peak, I guess, would be the pathologist, would be the physician in the laboratory that basically makes all of the medical decisions and ensures that we are doing things in accordance with ethics and things like that. Next down from a pathologist would be a pathology assistant, where they would help gross the samples that come in for pathology. And then we have cytotechs, which basically a cytotech looks at hundreds and hundreds of cells every day and is under a scope the entire time. And then we have histology techs, we have medical laboratory techs, we have histology scientists and laboratory scientists. But there's many facets to the laboratory itself, and there's not just the medical side, there's also the research side of things as well. But it just depends on like what type of avenue you want to go down. I mean, and then we also have entry-level positions, which would be secretarial staff, phlebotomy staff, laboratory aides, and things like that.
So really, I mean, when you talk about 60-some people in your department, there's a lot.
A lot of different job descriptions, yes, but they all serve a very distinct purpose in, you know, getting the results out. We have the pre-analytical side, the analytical side, and the post-analytical side. So we just have to make sure that all facets of that are covered each and every day.
What advice do you have for that person maybe in high school who loves science, not quite sure what they want to do, maybe never thought of this as a path to take?
Well, we do offer an extensive job shadowing process here at Meadville Medical Center. If anybody's ever interested in trying to see what we do and, you know, is interested in this type of field, we could always offer a job shadow where they could come and sit with a laboratorian and see what we do. That's always an option. And then also just research, and then you know, even on YouTube, you can look at laboratorians and type that into YouTube and basically find anything you would ever want to find.
Well, speaking of watching things, a lot of times people watch a 60-minute TV show and think that everything's going to get solved in 60 minutes when they come to the doctor. What's the reality when you get the sample and the testing starts to take place? Realistically, what's that process, and how long does it take before you start getting information?
Well, it definitely it depends on the robust nature of the actual test, and then how you know, how many samples we have and things like that. But I would say that it can range anywhere from a few minutes to weeks. So depending on the complex nature of the test. You know, just as an example, so a CBC, a general CBC, we get down in the laboratory, we'll get it, we'll put it on the analyzer, it'll be done. If it's, you know, not abnormal or anything like that, it will be done in a matter of 3 to 5 minutes. However, if we have genetic testing that unfortunately a patient may have gotten a recent poor diagnosis or something like that, we'll have to take that material and send it off to a esoteric laboratory that has you know, a specific type of test, and that test could take anywhere from, you know, 2 to 3 weeks. So it really just depends.
So a lot to it.
Yes.
Just be patient.
Correct.
and when it comes to everybody's health, there's that eagerness to know right away. So
absolutely.
There's certainly an understanding for that, but there is a process, and it does take time.
Correct.
What do you do to relax at the end of the day?
I would say take walks, you know, I work out, play golf, play with my children, you know, we do things, trampoline, that kind of stuff. Just anything anybody else does, you know.
Okay, so hobbies are just outside.
Pretty much. Pretty
That's
much.
good. Was it important to, when you were looking to work here, to know that this was a great place to raise a family?
Absolutely. We actually grew up, or not grew up, I grew up in Conneautville, but you know, it definitely had a small town feel. But my wife and I we lived in Meadville initially, but then we realized that we wanted to move to have the girls go to a smaller school. So we moved out to the Cambridge Springs area. So, so they're definitely going to a smaller school now. But yeah, that was definitely very important.
What does your field look like in 10 years with the way technology is changing?
Wow. Well, I have to anticipate that one day, does everybody, I don't know if anybody knows Theranos. Do you remember that Theranos thing with the lady that said basically we could take a drop of blood and do every test known to man? Obviously that didn't work out, but I do anticipate a day or a time frame in which, you know, you almost think that it's going to be like Star Trek, you know, scanners and things like that. They are working on that technology, and as far as one drop of blood or one drop of body fluid, they might be able to tell you everything you need to know. I don't see that in the next 10 years, but I maybe see that in the next 20 to 30. So,
if folks have questions, they can certainly talk to their doctor, but the website has a lot of great content as well.
Right.
So what sort of information can folks find on the website?
The laboratory website, you can find out information about the specific tests, what the doctor may be looking for, and things like that. You know, we generally don't tell people to go to WebMD, but you can also find out, as far as if you have a diagnosis, you can find out a lot more information about that diagnosis. But at the same time, we would always want individuals or patients to speak with their doctor.
Eric Shaffer with us here today, laboratory manager at Meadville Medical Center. This has been fascinating. Learned a lot about you.
Thank you.
Congrats on everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you have any questions, you can talk to your primary care physician. Eric, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the golf course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.